AJ, this NIL deal has been the gift that keeps on giving to us that cover the sports world. Central Michigan or Western Michigan or something offered up $1 million to a player to come play for them. Instead, Caleb Williams transfers to USC and is their starting quarterback instead. But a MAC school put up $1 million to get this player with this NIL ruling. Players going in the transfer portal. Players are now selecting which team they want to go to for what can be most beneficial for them and their family in the short term. Will it end up hurting them in the long term? We shall see. We all think probably. Nonetheless, it'll hopefully get figured out. Now, the NIL ruling in the ability to give out money and pay players and get players money for them to join your squad has started a beef between two lifelong friends. Two guys from West Virginia. One has climbed to the mountaintop one time, the other 6 or 7. Two guys that have changed the sport of college football from the same area during the same time, who have done things parallel to each other, one winning at a much higher rate than the other. Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher are about to fucking throw hands.
Yes.
We're talking old school Donnybrook. We're talking West Virginia, right to the mouth. Nick Saban, all right, throws a left back at Jimbo Fisher. This all started last night with Nick Saban speaking on a panel publicly where he talks about the state of the NIL, the state of college football, and in doing so, saws down an old friend that starts a war that we have not seen in some time publicly. Here's Nick Saban starting that thing. The shot heard round the world.
But I know the consequence is going to be difficult for the people who are spending tons of money to get players. And you've read about them. You know who they are. I mean, we were second in recruiting last year. A&M was first. A&M bought every player on their team. Made a deal for name, image, and likeness. All right, we didn't buy one player.
Okay.
All right, but I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain that in the future because more and more people are doing it. So it's tough, and people blame the NCAA. But in defense of the NCAA, we are where we are, all right, because of the litigation that the NCAA gets, like the transfer portal. Every time somebody wanted to transfer, they'd apply for a waiver. All right, if you didn't give them, if the NCAA didn't give them a waiver so they could be immediately eligible, they filed suit. So the NCAA would back off and give them a waiver. So they just said, we're just going to make a rule where everybody can transfer. That's how that happened. So if the NCAA doesn't get some protection from litigation, whether we got to get an antitrust or whatever it is, from a federal government standpoint, this is not going to change because they cannot enforce their rules, just like Nate said. We have a rule right now that says you cannot use name, image, and likeness to entice a player to come to your school. Hell, read about it in the paper. I mean, Jackson State paid a guy $1 million last year that was a really good Division I player to come to the school. It was in the paper, and they bragged about it.
Deion.
Nobody did anything about it.
Affleck,
I mean, these guys at Miami that are going to play basketball there for $400,000, it's in the newspaper.
I didn't know he was going
The guy tells you how he's doing it. So, but the NCAA can't enforce their rules because it's not against the law.
So I don't think Nick Saban planned on starting wars with both Jimbo Fisher and Deion Sanders whenever he walked onto that stage last night to start talking about the state of the NIL. And I think a lot of people will see this as potentially hypocritical because everybody has assumed that for a long time, Nick Saban had been cheating and paying players and under the table and paying family members to have jobs in the area so their bank accounts change, not the players' bank accounts change. And people are driving around in nice cars. That's what the word was about Nick Saban from outside of Alabama. Am I wrong in thinking that, AJ Hawk?
No, that's definitely something that people absolutely would assume, that they are doing it as well as the majority of big-time schools.
So the NIL deal kind of allowed other people in other teams to potentially start like almost corralling people like, hey, we're allowed to do what the big schools are doing now. And Nick Saban hates it. Nick Saban's not a fan of it. You could hear him basically saying, we're not going to be able to keep up. All right, we're going to fall down here. In Alabama, by the way, I'm a fan. Roll motherfucking tide. You hear me? I am a fan of anybody and anything that is dominant for a sustained amount of time, because the amount of work and the amount of effort and diligence and time and focus and sacrifice it takes to continue to have success is something that I have the utmost respect for and I'm a fan of. Now, though, it seems like Nick Saban sounds like a little bit of a hypocrite.
Yeah.
A little bit of a hypocrite in all of our eyes. In all of our eyes, it sounds like a little bit of a hypocrite. And Jimbo Fisher said, nah, you think he's a hypocrite? I fucking know him since the old days.
Yeah.
This is Jimbo Fisher calling a press conference this morning to answer what Nick Saban claimed just last night.
Any contact with Nick since
No. Oh, he's called.
He's called me this morning. Fuck.
you just didn't take the call?
Not going to. We're done.
Fuck that guy.
And
He shows you who he is.
and then I just wanted
He's the
to
greatest ever, huh?
You can't move on, bud. Who's the reporter?
and then I just wanted
When you
to
got all the advantages,
Just let him go.
it's easy.
and I just wanted to
So that guy had a really important follow-up.
Yep.
Okay? As he was kind of pissed off, he goes, yeah, Nick tried to call me. All right, we're done. He's fucking dead to me, okay? This guy is done. I'm not talking to him. Oh, it's all fun and games, huh? What happens when the rabbit gets the gun? Is basically what Jimbo just said to Saban. Then he would go on to say this about Nick Saban. This one's a big one. This one's a big one.
Some people think they're God.
Whoa.
Go dig into how God did his deal. You may find out about a guy that a lot of things you don't want to know. We built him up to be the czar of football. Go dig into his past, or anybody that's ever coached with him.
Whoa.
You can find out anything you want to find out. What he does and how he does it.
You
And it's
coached for him?
despicable.
So it's despicable, he says. He says, listen, if somebody out there, okay, somebody wants to do a little investigating work, huh? Who wants to do it? Who wants to do it? Somebody wants to hear it. Fuck, somebody will want to do this. Go ahead and look into it. It's despicable. What is he talking about there, AJ? We're talking.
That's what I want to know. I want to follow it. So he says, like, you can find it out. Just do some digging. Talk to anybody that coached for him. My first follow-up, excuse me, Coach, you coached for him for, I believe, 5 or 6 years. Please do expound upon what you are trying to tell us. I would love to know all the details. But I guess, my question is he just claiming that, hey, he did like corrupt things to get recruits on campus and they paid players, whatever? Or is he trying to encompass everything? Like, hey, he's a bad dude as well off the field. That's what I'm worried about.
I think B is what he was trying to allude to
That's
there.
that's why it's so real. And that's
Yes!
why it's so, like, this is unheard of, really.
Yes, and then back to the football. I mean, him calling him, some people think they're gold. Yeah. You know, some people think they're gold. Rich Rodriguez, same accent, by the way. The West Virginia accent is a sweet one, you know. And Saban moved to Alabama, and he's been in the South for a long time, so I assume the West Virginia and the Southern accent, just like the same with Jimbo Fisher, have come together. But there is a certain cadence that those West Virginia folks have. And the amount of success that they've had, being West Virginia guys, I think West Virginia has a lot of pride in. Now they're seeing these two guys go at it. And Jimbo Fisher wasn't done, by the way. He kind of talking about what we're talking about when it came to hypocrisy from this godlike, czar-like figure that was just running his mouth last night on a goddamn stage. And if you watch while Saban was talking, his right foot was fucking... I mean, he had been thinking about this NIL deal for a long time while he was talking. His foot was doing this thing right here. It's like he is so pissed about this.
Yeah.
Jimbo Fisher also pissed. This is what he said about the way things have been done under Nick Saban's leadership, basically.
And the operations, the way things were done the other way, when the parity was there, like we said, never has been parity. Certain people never followed the rules anyway. No, I didn't say that. It's my statement.
So I believe what was said in the back there was, do you think Saban has broke the rules or whatever? Never said that. Just made a statement or whatever. So Jimbo is just trying to lay things out like, hey, if you guys want to look into what this guy has done, I'm not going to do exactly what he did, which is just openly say that I cheated to get my entire class that beat his class. But if you guys want to go ahead and snoop around, go ahead and do so. Remember the guy at Tennessee, Pruitt? What? He had McDonald's.
Yeah, that's right.
He had a McDonald's bag, showed up, like a couple extra nuggets in this thing, a little extra cheese on that Big Mac if you want to fucking come come to Tennessee. What was Saban doing? How has he had success for this long? I know they say it's just competition, and if you get a bunch of 5 stars, other 5 stars want to come because they're going to get better, and everybody basically ends up in the NFL, and you're going to be a national champion. That seems like a lot for recruiting, but everybody has assumed that Nick Saban has cheated of some sort with the old rules of the NCAA. Now everybody else is getting to do it, and he's pissed. That is why the big hypocrisy thing's happening, I think, AJ.
I mean, okay, so now does Saban call his own presser, and does he try to respond to this? And
all right.
Jimbo's not taking his calls, so is Miss Terry, Saban's wife, going to try to patch things together?
Yeah, it's Jimbo's and Saban's, because I do believe they have many mutual friends as well. I would assume there's a lot, let alone like ESPN executives as well. Hey, we need you two to fucking.
Hey, is he calling though? Is the NCAA going to call Jimbo and be like, "Hey, Jimbo, you were on his staff for a while, and you're saying there's these violations. We're going to have to sit down and do an interview. We need you to kind of let us know what was going on." Is that going to happen?
I would assume, and Jimbo will go, "You're right. The University of Alabama was doing that. Suspend us. Suspend them. Suspend them for."
He was with him at LSU.
Oh, was he? I don't remember.
That's why Jimbo. I was reading some stuff after I saw this a little bit ago, and Jimbo had the opportunity to come back and be the OC of Alabama, and he said no and turned it down.
Watch LSU get banned from bowl games for the next 10 years because what Saban and Jimbo did.
Brian Kelly.
10,
Not
15,
the family.
My family.
Oh, you think maybe they orchestrated this together
to get LSU. That is what
Coach
would
O
happen.
in on it?
Maybe.
Coach O, maybe. Yeah. I remember you guys cheating all that stuff. LSU, I had to clean it up. You know what I mean? Like Tom Walm's game down there.
Yeah.
Waystar. Anyways, Deion Sanders also not happy, obviously, with Saban. Much more lighthearted than Jimbo Fisher. But I guess him saying, they paid a guy $1 million. I remember that happening.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that being big news. It was something.
It was legal at the time.
It was.
It still is. Is it still legal, or is this what they're trying to retroactively go back and punish?
Boom. That's what they're trying to do, because I guess what Saban said, where there was a rule where you can't openly recruit players with NIL money, and then everybody started doing it, is what Saban's point. Well, I think Saban's entire point there was that there is a rule that the NCAA can't enforce because there's no litigation behind it. And I think the way he went about saying that, he fucking murdered one of his friends. And buried his Aflac partner as well. But it was just him trying to make, I think, an overarching point. That is, you weren't allowed to ever just use NIL deals as recruiting tools. But literally, I was in college football for one fall, basically. That's it. And everybody I talked to, when they were talking about the NIL stuff potentially coming into being, it was like, yeah, we got dealership here. We got this company that'll do a meet and greet. We'll be able to give guys like 20 grand for this autograph signing here, 30 grand here. I would assume all those things would be laid out to a recruit. Hey, we have this dealership that twice a year will do a $25,000 signing where you'll sign a bunch of stuff and you'll be there and they'll sell it. We can do that 2 times a year for you, about $50,000 a year if you were to come here. This is what you'll be able to get. I guess it's different when they just say, hey, here's a check for $50,000 to come here, as opposed to that. But I assume this was always going to be utilized as a recruiting tool. I don't know why anybody else assumed differently, unless you were at the top and you were the only one that was able to do it for so long.
Well, how do you prove that a school did use this as a way to bring a high school player there? Technically could you show them, hey, look at what your receiver coming in here. You're a 5-star recruit. Look at the 2 5-stars we had the year ahead of you. This is what they made. Like, hey, we can't promise you anything, but this is the tier we feel like you are on.
Well, and I've seen some posts from college recruiting things that are like NIL worth, and they're putting up like $35K. They're putting on, like, how people used to be like 5-star, 4-star.
Oh, for players. Jeez. Okay.
Yeah. So like somebody's like, oh, this is a 4-star recruit, NIL worth probably with the followers that they have and how good of a player they are, $45,000 a year or something like that. Like that became like a part of the recruiting process and the scouting process, like how much money this person is probably eligible for. Now back to the $1 million thing that you were talking about that we all thought was legal, even though Saban just said that was never ever legal. The recruit that allegedly happened to said, why are my family still live in a small house if I'm a millionaire? And then Deion quote tweeted that and said, I ain't even getting paid $1 million to coach Jackson State. So I think that might have been a miscommunication, or maybe an overarching deal, or a long-term deal that ended up taking place, or maybe a fugazi deal that we thought at the time was a fugazi deal. So I don't know how that whole thing worked out, but This is good. This is good heat. Hey, this is good action between Jimbo and Saban.
Oh yeah, and I assume in terms of them like making up, they're going to gas this up all the way until they play in that game. They're
October 8th.
Yeah, they're hoping we get a frickin' Harbaugh, Schwartz situation at midfield after the game, where maybe one of them swings on the other one.
I also don't think Saban's happy because didn't A&M pull the upset on Bama last year with a third-string quarterback? Remember there was a video of that kicker's mom in the stands too. It was I believe they did upset them last year too. So Saban. And then recruiting.
Saban. That's how competitive these dudes are, by the way. Look, they're like 90 years old, these two guys. Okay, they've made like $700 million, these guys. They've won. They're still recruiting every fucking offseason, every single day. They're going in and coaching football every single day and getting pissed off about other people doing stuff. Think about that competitive stamina. It's unfucking matched, I think, whenever it comes to football guys' competitive stamina.
Think about like guys like Saban. Every day for the last, 55 years, this dude has been just on the grind, trying to find players, trying to find the best possible way to get his points across to the players and what defense and offense you should run. Like, this dude, I don't know. I don't know how guys like that do it. Jimbo as well. Like, I love that Jimbo. So you're telling me there was not a press conference scheduled?
Nope.
Jimbo somehow tells the SID there at A&M, hey,
fucking give me a mic. I need a motherfucking
and what, does he just go then? And what? He just say, I got to get some things off my chest?
Give me a motherfucking mic tomorrow morning. I need it. Did you see what that fucking asshole said? Did you hear what he said? And the SID's like, well, we should prepare some remarks. I got my remarks. What, he thinks he's a god? He's czar? Fucking skeletons in the closet? Yeah, I got all my notes, okay? And if somebody tries to ask me a question, I got shit to say, I'm going to make sure they don't get their fucking question out either at 4 or 5 different times. Bullshit. There ain't no parody.